Hello everybody and welcome back to my YouTube channel. This video continues a segment of mine where I rank films in franchises, filmographies, etc. The filmographies I've focused on so far have been of the James Bond movies and directors Martin Scorsese and Zack Snyder. However, today's video is on my favourite director of all time. As I usually do, I will rank the movies in a tiered list going from masterpiece to great to good to watchable to terrible. Given that Dune has just released in Australia, finally, this is Kia's Reviews, and this is my ranking of all of Denis Villeneuve's directorial films. Denis Villeneuve's directorial debut was in 1998 with August 32nd on Earth, and it is definitely a decent first film for him. Even though it is very obvious that this was created on a low budget, the enticing part of the entire film for me was that all of the dialogue was in French. The two leads are great amongst a weak story, and their chemistry really distracted me away from a strange yet flawed plotline. Another grievance I had with this film was that it took about 45 minutes before the actual story kicked in, which ended up being about halfway through the runtime. It briefly sets up the characters at the beginning, but as the movie goes on, it becomes obvious that this is more of a character-based story rather than a properly centered plot. A lot of the movie is based on the chemistry between the two leads, and that was the only major point that kept me interested the entire time. For a first film, it's alright, but it was a decent starting point for Denis, so I'll put August 32nd on Earth in the good section. As much as I wanted to like Maelstrom since it had a very promising premise and a good performance from the lead actress, this film is definitely better than Denis' debut, even though this is still flawed. Everyone has their favourite director, but every director has his shortcomings, and in his early movies, it's clear that Denis' films aren't all perfect. This is his second movie, and it's still clear that he was working with a low budget. The lead actress is superb, and basically carries the entire film on her back. The plot itself isn't too hard to follow, and it travels at a great pace. Narrated by a fish being cut up throughout really didn't make any sense to me, and as I'm sure that people have interpretations on what the fish could mean for the movie, I have no idea whatsoever. Maelstrom isn't memorable, but it's still good to see Villeneuve's roots, especially in his second film. This wouldn't be a film I'd rewatch, unfortunately, so I'll put Maelstrom in the good section as well. Film number 3 from Denis is titled Polytechnique, and this is the point at which his films begin to become great. This is one of the most harrowing and haunting movies I've ever watched. What only can be described as a horrific act, this film is about the Montreal Massacre that happened in 1989. It's a dramatisation of an anti-feminist man who feels like women have only beaten him down his whole life and decides to go to an engineering school and shoot as many women as he can find. This was a very hard movie to watch. Each gunshot felt scary, your heart sank every time you got a glimpse of his gun, and the scariest part was that the killer didn't look like it affected him at all. The actor who portrayed this disgusting man had a deadpan facial expression in every single shot. He really got under my skin. You can't really describe this movie as good or great because of its story, but you can definitely appreciate how that story was made into a film. The last thing I'll mention is that I was very surprised by the lack of character development. You know the killer's motives from the very first scene, and you spend only the second half with a man who is witnessing the deaths and murders of people he knew, and beyond that. In that way, it didn't give you that familiar feeling of connecting to anybody, truly embracing the impact of the randomness of the murderer's shooting. What Denis captures in 70 minutes is incredible, and even though you may not be emotionally tied to specific characters, you feel emotionally tied to their innocence, and that particularly pays off in the final 20 minutes. This is a difficult movie to get through, but it's worth watching once, only to appreciate how the film was put together and not anything beyond that. So I'm placing Polytechnique in the great section. Incendies is a film regarded as one of the greatest of all time and the best in Denis' career. Personally, I don't think it's Denis' best, but I definitely agree that it is one of the greatest movies ever made. Whilst his first 3 films are quite short in length, Denis finally introduces his first of many long feature films to come. This is arguably one of the most visually amazing films he's ever made. The story is heart-wrenching, upsetting, but also bittersweet at times. Everybody in the cast performs to the best of their ability, and in exchange, gives the audience an incredibly new experience. It's in the vein of many war films like it, but stands out as one of the best because of its uniqueness, its direction, and emotional connection. Whilst his last film cut all ties to character development is the basis of Incendies. The cinematography is gorgeous and presents itself as a real gem to witness on screen. Like Polytechnique, Incendies is arguably even harder to watch because there are some disturbing scenes spread out. You don't see a lot of these scenes graphically, but because you may hear something or get a glimpse of an event, your imagination immediately switches on, and that's where the haunting begins. Denis gets into your head with Incendies, and I can definitely understand why everyone raves about it. Even though this has a long runtime, if you can stick it out to the end to witness one of the biggest reveals in cinema history, you're going to be glad that you watched this at least once. Due to its upsetting nature, I don't think I'd personally jump back into rewatching this anytime soon, and that's not because this isn't a good movie, it's because it's fantastic, and it hits the mark on what it's wanting to be with heavy content that's not easily rewatchable. So I'll put Incendies in the great section. Villeneuve's first English language film, Prisoners, is one of my absolute favourite movies of all time. If Incendies hadn't already convinced you that Denis is a brilliant director with promise, Prisoners is definitely the movie that will confirm it. This is a purely perfect film, with a cast consisting of Hugh Jackman, Jake Gyllenhaal, Taylor Swift fans will come at me for even mentioning his name, Paul Dano, Viola Davis, Terrence Howard, and more. This is the definition of a magnificent thriller. It keeps you questioning the subtle clues provided and the suspects that the leads come across, as well as what might happen next. There are very few films that I can't pick the twist ending, and Prisoners delivers one of the most unexpected endings of a movie ever. You hold your breath as Hugh Jackman delivers his career-best performance here, his increasingly infuriating anger towards the disappearance of his daughter and his little faith in the local police gradually takes him down a road that is dangerous yet incredible to watch. There are scenes where I had to look away because I was so convinced that his character would do something completely horrifying. Jake Gyllenhaal is phenomenal in this movie too, and the dynamic between Hugh and Jake is unquestionably spot on, their chemistry and rivalry growing with each scene they are in together. Also, a quick shout out to Paul Dano. His performance in this film is why I was so excited to hear that he was going to play the Riddler in next year's The Batman. This performance made me believe that he'd deliver such a great villain like the Riddler. If you have not seen Prisoners, you really need to set aside 2 hours and a half, no breaks, go in blind, and watch this absolute masterpiece mess with your mind. Upon each rewatch, I always find a couple of lines of dialogue or hidden clues that I didn't pick up on before. Prisoners never fails to surprise me, and it's truly a movie deserving of such immaculate praise, so I'll put Prisoners in the masterpiece section. If you've seen Prisoners and thought that that was mind-twistingly intense, get ready for Enemy, because it is a mindfuck. Excuse the language, but oh man, this is definitely one of the trickiest films to work out. You think you can follow a seemingly simplistic plot, but be confused by aspects, and that was the black hole I fell into when I first watched the film. After listening to fellow YouTube reviewer Chris Stuckman analyse what Enemy really is about and provide evidence from the movie to support his claims, my mind blew, and it made this experience of the movie all the more intriguing. If you have seen Enemy, I do recommend you check out Stuckman's video. This has the scariest ending of all time if you go in blind and know nothing. This is purely what the fuck material. When I first saw it, I screamed because I had no idea what to expect from the film, and to be confronted with an ending like that terrified me and genuinely had my heart racing for a few minutes at least. Jake Gyllenhaal, sorry again to the Tay-Tay fans, is amazing in this. I won't go on about Enemy because it's one that you need to watch with no context to properly enjoy the experience. I highly recommend this, and whilst it may seem incredibly weird, once you know what it's really about, it'll blow your mind. I love Enemy more than most people, so I'm unapologetically putting it in the masterpiece section. Sicario is a movie I am constantly in conflict with. My opinion always changes after this film as to whether I like it or not. However, after this watch, I really like it. With an all-star cast inclusive of Emily Blunt, Josh Brolin, Benicio del Toro, and Jon Bernthal, among more, this is a brilliant story on a section of the war against drugs at the border area between the United States and Mexico. I regard this as one of the most intense yet slow burn movies I've ever seen, and I really love that about Sicario. The performances from the cast are the best part of the entire movie because each of them have a secret, and as everybody's secret is revealed, the story's stakes get higher and more serious. There's scenes packed with tension, but unfortunately there's a lot of scenes that really bore me, so that intensity that is supposed to be felt wasn't consistent enough for me. It's not amazing, but it's a pretty great movie, so I'll put Sicario in the great section. Arrival is shrouded in mystery, and that's what makes it such a great movie. There is always something to figure out, and as soon as you learn more of the unknown, you can't help but want the movie to go a lot faster. The anticipation for what happens next is longed for, and because it moves at an intermediate pace, this gives time for Amy Adams and Jeremy Renner to show off their performances. They both deliver incredibly. The visual effects and sound editing was phenomenal, and that's why I'm not surprised that this won Best Sound Editing at the Oscars that year. Even though you can see similarities obviously between Alien and Arrival, it still keeps you on the edge of your seat with an incredible score from composer Johan Johansson. It sets up an eerie tone but your eyes are never taken away from the screen. I genuinely have no idea how he does it, but Denis knows how to pull you in and make you feel enticed within his movie. He has shown that he is a master of cinema, and it really is continuously shown from Incendies onwards and even beyond Arrival. I'm putting Arrival in the great section. Blade Runner 2049 is unquestionably my favourite movie of all time. Even though I initially didn't love it, it took about 3 watches for me to fully appreciate its masterful cinematography, the beyond brilliant performances from the cast, the perfect continuation from its classic and beloved predecessor, one of the best music scores from 2 of the best composers of our time, Hans Zimmer and Benjamin Wallfisch, the pristine visual effects, and so much more. I could praise this film for days and point out exactly why I prefer this above any other movie I've ever seen. I reviewed it in June last year, and if you want a detailed explanation of why I think Blade Runner 2049 is the best film ever made, be sure to hop over and give it a watch. However, I will summarise briefly what the best parts are because I really will get caught up and ramble on for a while. Firstly, I have to give props to Jared Leto. A lot of people's judgment towards him as an actor is because of his portrayal of the Joker. However, I believe that he delivers one of the creepiest villains of all time here. Ryan Gosling and Harrison Ford give amazing performances, but I can't not acknowledge the proper Hollywood introduction of the beautifully cute and hot Ana de Armas. I know a few of you would not be surprised after my No Time to Die review that I have to mention her here, but this really set up her career, and as you can see from this movie onwards, she has done really well for herself. After having written my Blade Runner 2049 review last year, I don't have too much to add to it except for the fact that I encourage anybody who sees this video or my review from last year to watch this film, because it is the definition of a masterpiece. With that said, I'll put Blade Runner 2049 in the masterpiece section. Here is my definitive ranking of all 9 films directed by Denis Villeneuve. Denis is my favourite director because he brings consistent and frequently high-quality films, creating classics for the future. I can't wait to see Dune tomorrow as it's my most anticipated film of the year, so keep an eye out for my review, hopefully out tomorrow or on Sunday. Thank you all so much for tuning into my ranking of all of Denis Villeneuve's directorial films. Have you seen any of his movies? Which ones are your favourite, and are you looking forward to seeing Dune? Let me know below. As always, be sure to have a look at my previous reviews of The French Dispatch and Resident Evil: Welcome to Raccoon City. This has been Kia's Reviews, signing off for now.
Don't forget to like, follow, and obey.